Yeah. Frank and Joni, Dave is ready to go. All right, 30 seconds, please, Dave. Good evening and welcome to the May 11th, 2021 Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed Board of Managers meeting. Our first order of business, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next item is our public comment period, and we don't have anybody here from the public, so we're going to skip that this evening. Now, Maureen's here for another reason, but hi, Maureen. So we're going to move on to the next item, but again, I'll just at least say, anybody who's watching this at home, you're welcome to come down, tell us what we're doing right, tell us what we could be improving on. We'd love to hear from you. So the next item is going to be the approval of the agenda, and I already know we have a couple of things we need to change. So on the consent agenda, we're going to be pulling off 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6. Those items were accidentally removed from the board package, so the Board of Managers didn't have a chance to review those, and we'll deal with those on a separate occasion. And so with that, first of all, managers, are there any other items, any changes to this agenda? That was just added, Frank, so we haven't had a chance to review it. Anybody else? Seeing none. Joni, did you have a
Do you want
change?
You want a motion to amend the consent agenda? What do you want?
Not yet.
All right.
Nope, we're just going to do the agenda as is right now, amend it. Joni, anything else that I missed? Does that cover it?
Mr. Chair and managers, no, that covers it.
Okay, thanks. All right, I would then entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. So our first item then is on other old new business. We have a programs and projects update. Ladies, take it away. I don't know who's up.
Well, the level of Prior Lake has dropped now again to below the weir. It did start flowing about a month ago, and as of today, it officially stopped again. So it stayed pretty steady over the last month. I do have a video that I wanted to show for people that haven't seen inside the outlet structure before, and just to see like where the water level is sitting right at the top of the weir. This was taken today.
Jamie, could you describe what we're looking at?
Yeah,
Or is
so
this supposed to?
the weir is the zigzagged, or the zigzag is what we call the weir, and it was designed that way intentionally to be able to remove more water faster. For some reason, if there's more surface area, the water can go out faster. And then there was the 36-inch culvert pipe that was behind that, and that's the pipe that takes the water to the outlet channel, which is almost a half a mile underground. So, any more
Great.
explanation?
Thanks,
than that?
Jamie. Nope, I was just curious. I knew if anybody was looking at it, I only had this much idea, and I figured others
Okay.
didn't have any, so thank you.
Yep. And we did actually install some cameras at the outlet structure recently too. So we have 2 cameras that'll help us out. One is the image at the bottom is going to be more of like a security camera, just in case somebody does have an idea to vandalize or whatever. And then the upper one is going to be aiming at the grates. And the purpose of that is to help us know when there's vegetation stuck on the grate, so we know to go out and clear that off. On Saturday, our boat inspections are starting again, and this year we are going to hire waterfront, and last year was water guards. But it's going to be very similar. We have a few more hours that we're doing this year. So we will be doing Spring Lake, Upper and Lower Pryor, and then we're going to add Fish Lake to the mix just to get a little bit more information since we've never inspected at Fish Lake. And we are also going to throw in a few weekday shifts just to kind of keep people on their toes. Otherwise, we'll be covering the weekends on Spring, Upper, and Lower, pretty much Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You'll see we have more hours dedicated to Spring Lake because the DNR doesn't inspect at Spring Lake, so we have to cover all those hours, and then they share Upper and Lower Pryor with us, so we just inspect when the DNR isn't able to be at those launches on the weekend. And also on Thursday, we're going to be installing our eyelids equipment at the Spring Lake boat launch. So I just put that image there to show where the unit is going to go. And eyelids, it stands for Internet Landing Installed Device Sensor. And what this is going to do is it's going to videotape people launching their boats. And so once a boat drives by this unit, there's like a metal detector in there, so it'll know that it should start recording, and then it also will start playing some pre-recorded messages. I think we have like 5 different messages picked out for the sensor to play, which they will hear when they're getting their boat ready to launch. So like make sure to put in or remove your drain plug and remove any vegetation or animals, zebra mussels, especially aquatic invasive species, of course, is what we're looking for. So that will be installed on Thursday. We're going to do a little like test trial where to see if we can somehow monitor how effective this is going to be. So yeah, I'm announcing it to the world that we are not going to be playing any messages for the first few weeks, but it will be recording so that we can just see like how many people are actually cleaning off their boat without the recorded messages that they can hear. And we're going to have like a smaller sign on it, so it's not quite as visible, but it will say that it is recording. The purpose of that is not to give out citations or anything with that period of time, but just like what are people doing without a whole lot of mentioning of it. And then after a few weeks, we will turn on the sound and put on a bigger sign to see like how effective it actually is out at the launch. And then we're thinking at the end of the year too, we might want to remove the sound and the big sign again to see like, did it actually change people's ways throughout the year or maybe not. So let's see. Yeah, any questions about that?
I think that's a great idea to do some videotaping beforehand to get as a baseline. Excuse me, I think that's a good idea. I like it. I was first of all going, well, why would you be doing that? And then you went on, and I like that. Good idea, Jamie.
Thanks.
Anybody? Anything for Jamie? Go ahead, Steve.
Jamie, regarding the cameras at the outlet structure, let's say it's a 3-day weekend, Memorial Day, 4th of July, those cameras are watching for debris picking up the outlet structure. Do we have someone covering a long weekend like that to clear that out?
It depends. And so certain times of year, the vegetation gets stuck on the grate a lot more. So it's typically really bad when the low flow gate is open and it's like maybe June or July, and there's a lot of flow because there's a lot of suction. So if it's not flowing, of course, we aren't going to have any sort of suction whatsoever. And then again, like when the low flow gate is closed, it doesn't have as much either. So to answer your question, yes, we will if we need it. We sometimes have up to people coming out even 2 times a day on the weekends when we have to, when it gets really bad. And also it depends on the level of the lake. If it's at a really normal or lowish level, like there's not really a concern to get the vegetation off. But if it's at all on the rise or higher, then we would be on a higher alert for that. A lot of times, we have had to hire somebody in the past, but also the city of Prior Lake usually is the one that will volunteer their time to go out on the weekends.
Okay, thank you.
Frank? Now you're off. There you were.
There we go, thank you. Two quick questions. One, do we have an obligation to tell people they're being recorded? Do you know? I mean, I
Out
see those
loud?
kind of signs when I go into
In a,
places.
well, I don't know either way. You mean like in a video, audio format?
Is that the recording, audio?
We have a,
only?
well, we have a sign, so I don't know. I could ask that.
Okay,
I can look at
just curious about that. And then two, the images that this captures, they're iCloud images, so that if someone takes a baseball bat to this, we still get a good picture of them doing it?
It is pretty good quality, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, Frank, and we have your
Preventive.
picture, so.
Yes, I'll be there with my car.
But there are cameras, so I think in the initial write-up, I recall us having a conversation on that subject. So I don't recall, but I think it was covered in there. But if you recall, the state and/or cities put up red light cameras as well. And it's not that as folks are driving, they are aware that they're being recorded. I don't know if that helps, but anyway, I just
Maybe there is no.
add that. I don't know, but it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll double check that just to make sure we're covering all those bases, but
Kurt?
One of the problems we have, I think our viewers should know this too, is we will not at this time be able to prosecute any visual violations that we see. We talked employee Keller Miller talked to the Scott County Sheriff, and they turned us down, saying they had too much of a workload already. I would suggest, if Catherine hasn't done so, that someone, Joni, in your office, contact the county attorney, Mr. Hoshevar, because he'd be one person who I think could have some influence as to maybe pursuing that question. Because if we can't enforce what we see, you know, it loses a lot of its sting, let's put it that way. Okay, thank you.
yeah, we actually did get in contact with the sheriff again just to ask if they would reconsider. And they are, so their short answer is that it's not legal in the state of Minnesota to give a citation based off of a video, which I guess like in the past they were giving away citations at red lights, people that were going through, so they weren't able to do that anymore.
Yeah, that
However-
was challenged. Someone challenged in the city of Minneapolis for people going through red lights, and they won. Minneapolis had to refund over $1 million worth in traffic ticket fines. But I think we should, at least approach the county attorney, Joni, and just get it on record as to what his opinion is for this situation. Because it's not exactly like the traffic ticket thing, One of the things with the traffic ticket, by the way, was when they took the picture, you couldn't see the driver's face because of the angle of the camera. You could get the license plate number, you could get the looks of the vehicle, but you couldn't get the face of the driver. And I think that was one of the bases by which it was overturned.
Mr. Chair and Manager Hennis, we will certainly reach out to the county attorney and ask that question again. We've also had internal discussions that if it's determined that we cannot issue citations, maybe at a minimum we can still send a letter and say you have been,
We saw you.
you've been observed of breaking the law.
I'm going to, just as a reminder, when we've talked about this, it's not exclusively just to even if we could issue a citation, that's the only value for this. Just as a reminder, there's a lot of information. I'm always curious about how many boats have already been put in and taken out. So when do we start? I mean, it can have impacts even just on that. How many people are actually going in without inspecting their boats? That's an extremely valuable piece of information to me for the amount of money. We've upped and decided that we wanted to try and better protect our lakes. This is just a great data source, Kurt. So I think there's a lot of reasons why even this is still valid, and I'm not suggesting we don't still sort of run that down in maybe a letter, but I think this thing is extremely useful for a lot of reasons, and you know, the CAC back when Steve was there. Bruce, move this forward. There's a lot of really good stuff, I think, that's going to come out of this, and it's a great pilot project, and I'm curious to see what we learn at the end of the year.
You know,
Bruce?
Yeah, one quick question. What's the name of the company doing the inspections for us? Again, I
The
didn't.
boat inspections?
Yeah.
Waterfront restorations?
Waterfront?
Front.
Okay. So the county is using Watercraft Inspection. Is that a different company or?
We're using the same company as
That's what I thought.
county.
Same
Yep.
company. Did we get better pricing because of that?
Yes. They
Okay.
said that we did.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did want to add one more piece of information to the owner of Eyelids. He said that he has worked with the sheriffs in the past, and I haven't, this was actually just this morning, that he's met with the sheriffs in other, in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So he said that he'd be willing to meet with our sheriff too and try to show them what we're doing and just talk to them a little bit more to maybe try to somehow persuade them to get a little bit of information. And we could maybe even just get like the license plate number, and then they could give us the information, like the contact information, so that we could actually send a letter to these people or however. So we're gonna look into it a little bit more.
Thanks. Kurt?
see, that's a question too. Can they share with us the license plate information? That's another good question to ask the county attorney. And no, it has some other benefit. When I was out there, when the representative was out there the first time with Diane Lynch and Steve, and I think a couple others, the first question I asked was, well, what about the enforcement? He says, well, you guys have to talk to the police. Well, I said, what about you? You're the contractor. No, that's your end. We just have the equipment. So this was explored before, and I don't know if he changed his tune because he wanted to make us nail down a sale, but it's not quite that simple. But I think you have to go at it from the county attorney versus the cops, because it's too easy for them to just blow us off.
Thank you. All right, we're on, anything more on?
I have
Oh.
a couple more topics.
Go for
The curly leaf pondweed treatment will be starting in approximately a week. So we've got 23 acres chosen on Spring Lake that will be treated in the colored areas. We have 5 acres, and then this is shown in green, that are going to be treated in Lower Pryor, and 20 acres that will be treated on Upper Pryor. That's all I had.
I just had a quick update on an easement amendment that's been in process since 2018. This one just recently came back to life, and if you kind of push on the next one. For those of you that were around during that time, this was one where we discovered in 2016 that this easement was encroaching right onto some of the patios of the townhomes located just to the south of 21 and the east of 13. And the easement amendment, if you want to go to the next one, was moving that area outside of the backyards and patios and decks of that family and moving it to a different area. They were going to put in twice as much area as new, and this new area goes into a storm drain and eventually ends up in the wetland. So it does have equivalent conservation value, but then we're not, making people take out their decks and patios. But I'm bringing this up because we recently sent a mailing out to these landowners. We're finally moving forward with it. And the ones with the red areas that we're taking it away from, they're very happy about this. But we do have new landowners who have a new easement area that'll be in their backyards. And of course, I've had some calls about it, about what's going to be planted there, how's it's going to look. We're having a neighborhood meeting on Thursday. I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew what was happening and were aware of it in case you end up getting calls. But we're in the process. This has already been approved by the board, and we're just trying to work towards those final steps.
Thanks for the update, Maggie. Anyone? Nope. Okay. So that's it for programs, projects?
Mr. Chair, yes, it is.
Bruce?
One quick question on the packet here. And maybe we're going to be talking, or we're going to be talking about it later with fish stocking. Never mind.
We are. Awesome, great, thanks. Next item on the agenda is then the approval of a new CAC member, Maureen Reeder.
Mr. Chair and managers, so we do have Maureen Reeder with us this evening. Maureen was in, so she submitted an application to be on the Citizens Advisory Committee. She did attend the last Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, and the committee unanimously recommends that that we bring Maureen forward to the Board of Managers for your approval for her being appointed to the CAC.
Thank you. So Maureen, since you're here, would you like to come introduce yourself? Just tell us why you're motivated to join us too, please.
I've always dipped my toe in the water, so to speak. Thank you to whoever turned on the mic. In some of these environmental issues. And I come from an agricultural background. I currently manage a farm in southern Minnesota, near Montgomery, Minnesota, with my brothers and sisters. So I have some knowledge about conservation practices, the impact of agriculture, and a passion about the role that we can all, play together in improving water quality. And then I live on Spring Lake, and I've lived on Spring Lake for 25 plus years. And so over time, I've gotten involved in various issues that impact Spring Lake. Sometimes working hard to ensure that we have consistent practices and policies, because Spring Lake is one of those unique lakes that has a joint jurisdiction. And that's something you all do a lot. You're always working with other units of government and trying to find a cohesive way for us to move together forward in the interest of clean water. And so I think that's the other thing I would mention is that I do appreciate the work that you've done. I've been watching the work of this group for a long time, and I appreciate the service that all of you are providing. These are meetings you've been doing. These are long meetings, and you've been active and involved and engaged and care about our water quality and clarity for a long time. And so I'm really honored to be able to be considered to be a part of that process. I think you know my background, but I'll briefly mention I worked as an executive for a national nonprofit. My most recent work was in that area. And in that job, I worked with boards across the United States, nonprofit boards across the United States. And I had the experience of knowing and working through what is the role of the board, what is the role of the staff, and what is the role of volunteers. And so I look forward to that role of volunteer in this position, and that is to support the board's efforts and the staff's efforts and to provide input when asked. But I appreciate that our job is to try to build support and successful engagement with others in the one direction that we all want to go. So I thank you again for your consideration.
Awesome, thank you, Maureen. Thank you for your willingness to join our team. It's a growing team of capable people to try and do good for our water resources. Anybody, any thoughts, Kurt?
First of all, again, we ask anyone who's interested, we can always take on more members or more willing to have more people on the CAC. And I want to praise the current CAC, especially President Christian Morkerberg, who's done a stellar job. He came into a tough situation, and we've added some really good people. Christopher Crowhurst, Ben Burnett, Matt Newman, now Maureen. I'm sure I'm missing a few there, but it's been, and we certainly appreciate volunteering. Maureen, by the way, didn't read this, but she's the spouse of a long-time Spring Lake and my good friend, Spring Lake Township Supervisor Glenn Kelly. So welcome, and thank you for volunteering so much.
Thank you. Anybody, Frank?
Just confirming, it's a 3-year term? Okay.
Yes.
Bruce?
I would like to make a motion to approve the application of Maureen Reeder for membership to the CAC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Maureen, and welcome and congrats. All right, we're on to the next item. We're on to the 2021 Education Outreach Plan. The
Great.
floor is yours, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. So the 2021 Education Outreach Plan, it should be in your board packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through it. Just a reminder that the purpose of the district's outreach program is to improve the understanding of our local water resources and practices among all stakeholders in the district. So that includes partners, citizens, businesses, etc. And that includes an emphasis on the district's main priorities: water quality, water quantity, AIS. Our education program is, pretty broad. It includes, district communications like articles for the newspaper, for our website, our social media, project outreach, our volunteer program, events, our Citizens Advisory Committee, the FLC, our Farmer-Led Council, as well as general outreach to the public on clean water topics. Our education, different components of the education program are required as a part of a number of different things. So the education outreach program is part of our 2020 Water Resources Management Plan. As you know, our 10-year plan of what we're going to do. Our Citizens Advisory Committee is required. We're required to have that by state statute. Minnesota Rule 8410 also requires that the district has, in general, an education program which should address the district's goals and work related to water quality, water quantity, wetlands, and groundwater. Part of our grants, several of our grants require outreach as part of the grant, including, for example, our CARP grants. And lastly, our MS4 permit also has a required educational component. And actually, as part of the new MS4 permit, which, as you guys remember, we just had to reapply for, there are some new education requirements as part of that they've added to the new permit. So MS4, those requirements are focused on stormwater runoff and illicit discharge. A reminder, illicit discharge is anything basically that's going down the storm drain in your street gutter that's not water. So that could be trash, that could be leaves, grass clippings, motor oil, whatever. Anything that's not water is classified technically as illicit discharge. And as we know, not great for our local water bodies. So the goal is to promote education with the public to reduce that kind of pollution. So some of the requirements that the MS4 permit specifically lays out include: you must have, as an MS4 entity, you must have an education program, and you must have a plan detailing your program. And as part of that program, your efforts should be focused on informing the public on the impact of stormwater on water bodies and include actions that citizens can take to decrease the amount of pollutants that are being discharged in stormwater. So basically, how do local citizens impact water quality, and what can they do to reduce their contribution to pollution via stormwater? The MS4 permit specifically calls out that we need to do education related to pet waste, salt use, so for example, your driveways in the winter, as well as illicit discharge, which, as I mentioned, kind of covers a lot of different things, from grass clippings and leaves to, proper disposal of household hazardous waste like paint and pesticides and motor oil. And then lastly, we're also required to, each year, to do a minimum of one public involvement activity that includes a pollution prevention or water quality theme. So for example, that could be a cleanup event, which is kind of what we've done in the past. Storm drain stenciling, you could do a rain garden workshop, adopt a storm drain program, or like a rain barrel distribution event. This year, our plan is, we've heard some feedback that maybe we want to revamp our clean water cleanup events. And so we're going to try something new this fall. And instead of doing a leaf raking event, do a different type of event and do more of a storm drain clean out / stenciling event. So the storm drain stenciling, there's stencils that you would paint near the drains that say something to the effect of like, you know, keep the storm drains clear, drains to lake, that kind of thing, to remind people that what goes in the storm sewer isn't treated at a storm or a wastewater treatment plant. So that's what we're planning on doing for the fall. In addition to so other parts of the education program, in addition to what's required by MS4, much of the other parts of the education program support other district programs. You know, it basically highlights who the district is and what we're doing to serve residents. So this is stuff like project outreach, which I know you guys are strongly for. So writing articles for the local paper, you know, putting together project fact sheets like we did this fall or this spring, project tours for Sutton Lake. We're planning to do another tour this fall. I believe that was Steve's suggestion for the PLOC. Another part of the education program that supports district programs is our volunteer program. We've got several monitoring volunteer opportunities. For example, the camp program, we have volunteers that are monitoring water quality on several lakes. That helps us gather more data and saves us staff time. And we also have volunteers that are helping out with our CARP program and that kind of thing. Writing articles, highlights district projects, news, raises awareness of the district's work. And we have seen evidence that our outreach efforts are helping further our goals. Maggie noted this week, she's like, you know, when we have a good online presence and presence on social media, it reminds people that the watershed is here to help. And so if people have questions, they know who to call. Like, oh, I have a water question, I'm gonna call the district. And Jeff, we had a meeting talking about our CARP outreach and just making sure that when we do SANES and that kind of stuff, that our outreach is coordinated. And Jeff noticed that when they're out in the field now, we've been kind of at the CARP program for a number of years now, and so people in the community are starting to really, the word's getting out and getting around, and so when they encounter people when they're out working on CARP stuff, they're like, oh, you're working on the CARP stuff. Or when they ask and we say, oh yeah, we're working on CARP stuff, they're like, oh, I know what that is. Which was not the case in the past. They're like, what are you doing? So cumulatively over time, the outreach program has had a positive impact. For a further schedule of what we're planning on doing, the end of the education plan, if you guys haven't flipped through it, does have a table with kind of a schedule of our planned activities, which you can look through. A couple things that we've already done this year, it's as the weather heats up, activity kind of heats up the district, but we have already done a tour at Sutton Lake. We sent out our conservation easement newsletter mailing to our conservation landowners. As part of the CARP grant, we sent out an aquatic plant mailer to lakeshore owners on Spring and Prior Lake. And we've also installed interpretive signs to highlight the project at Raymond Park, our restoration project there. And one of those signs is in the education plan packet there. So that's basically a quick quick rundown of our education program and what we're required to do from what quarters.
Thanks, Catherine. Kurt?
Catherine, could you just kind of capsulize things and just give me the bullet points of what the minimal MS4 requirements are from the state for the watershed district? Just bang, bang, bang. Could you please?
So, and like I mentioned, you know, there are a couple things that we're required to do outside of MS4 for our education program, but we are required to do outreach on stormwater runoff and illicit discharge. We're required to do education on impact of pet waste, impact of salt use. We're required to have a education program and an education plan. And we're required to have a public involvement activity or event. Those are, it kind of expands upon, you know, what specific things in there, but those are kind of the topics they want to make sure that you cover.
I mean, do they say how many hours, how many projects we have to have? They don't. It's just a general statement. Okay.
Right, yeah, it's fairly general.
Right.
They don't, since, you know, every city and entity is a little different, it wouldn't necessarily make sense to say you have to do X number of hours.
Sure.
Because X number of hours is going to go different lengths. and
Depending
different
upon the
places.
community or whatever.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bruce?
Just clarification, the PLOC, or the MS4 permit is for the PLOC only, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. So it's, we have the MS4 for the PLOC, but it kind of sounds like we're still supposed to do the education district-wide. It's, since our MS4 is weird, it's kind of weird, but
Okay.
we're not targeting that research or that outreach only to the PLOC people.
Okay. We did a, I've only been on here 2 years. We did a plan like this last year or not? I can't remember.
We normally do an education plan every year.
Okay. This is very well done. And I was probably, too, would like to know number of hours it takes to do this very comprehensive list here. And just one other note here, I kind of find it funny. Your picture says hike the watershed participants. They're all sitting on a swing looking. So I just thought, they must have hiked the watershed and are tired. I thought it was a unique picture on the front there. But
They're enjoying the watershed.
There you go. Frank?
We've got, I don't know, somewhere between 12 and 15, maybe more, homeowners associations who have lake access between Spring and Upper and Lower Pryor. Do we engage them as partners, or are they receivers in some fashion in an organized way of these kinds of materials?
We really haven't engaged with them specifically, especially since we haven't done a lot of, since, you know, we haven't had a lot of direction to do a lot of robust outreach. So we've focused more of our outreach related to projects and other programs to support other programs the district is already doing, but that's not to say that wouldn't be a good idea.
You've got 36 different activities here, I counted them, so that's doing a pretty good job.
There's a lot. This is comprehensive. This is a great report and plan. One of the things that ever since I've joined the board that folks have asked, though, is what are our minimum requirements? We know we've got the MS4, we've got the grant stuff. There's a bunch of different requirements that we have to do, but what is it that we're doing over and above? There's clearly some items on here, like supporting Earth Day. It's probably not a requirement of ours, it's a choice of ours. And so I think one of the things that I know I've consistently been hearing, and I've heard it generally these two from since they've been on especially, and even actually previous board managers. So I'd like to find out if in one of these plans, or maybe even just next meeting, I would like to ask if we can actually just list what are the items that are directly supporting those things that are required by the law. Give us some of the gray areas. Please just let us know, and let us know what is over and above. which is okay. And I'm not saying that, because I know even just as Bruce and I have talked this, or Kurt and I, it's not that we're against doing some of that. I think folks are trying to understand what are the requirements and what are we doing that's over and above. Maybe it's good stuff that we support and get behind, or maybe we say, hey, maybe that one isn't one that we support, but maybe there's another effort like maybe Frank brought up. And that's one of the pieces that I think this is missing. And I sort of keep hearing that over and over again, and we never actually formally get the information to help us understand this, because we know that we're spending a considerable amount of your time, but we don't know how much. I don't know if you're 100% time dedicated to this, Catherine, but that's sort of a question of ours that we're also trying to understand, is how much of Catherine's time is doing interpretive signs and Earth Day and social media blasts, or are you supporting projects? I think you do some other stuff, but we're not aware of it. So those are my thoughts. I'm going to probably confirm with my colleagues, but I don't know if we maybe, because I think I've heard from both talking with these gents and hearing them again, to maybe, if we need to, do a staff directive to ask us, or to ask to get back to us with that information so we have a better understanding of what we're doing on this. So Joni, I see you're ready to comment.
Mr. Chair, I mean, would it work to take that list that we have on the back of the education and outreach of all our planned activities for the year? We could add another column and say, this is required for, this meets our MS4 requirement, this meets our state statute requirement.
And exactly.
And
And any of
then-
the other thing that's over and above. And give us a sense, please, for how much time Catherine spends on this. I mean, we've got,
Yes.
I don't know if you've always heard this, but I've said to a lot of people, and I don't know exactly what you do, Catherine, so, and I'm a board manager, right? I'm a part-timer, but I've seen you operate in the CAC stuff, and I've been impressed when I've listened. I think you have a lot more capabilities for us than just doing social media. I trust you're not, but I don't know that, right? I'm a part-timer that doesn't understand, and I think I'm not alone in that factor. And I know we're going to be putting on this big push to do projects in the upper watershed and try and get grant funding. And those things could have a huge impact for the district. So if I was to engage this bright, capable individual, it might not be doing a social media post on Earth Day, but it's maybe writing a grant to go help us fund one of our projects in the upper watershed. So that's why I think this group is just interested in getting a sense for that. Joni and Catherine, help us understand this. Nobody's against it, but help us understand that. And then we would talk about the use of this capable resource of ours.
Yeah, Mr.
We need,
One second, Joni first to respond, and you're up, Kurt.
Mr. Chair, we can certainly, yes, Catherine does wear many hats.
I figured that.
And so we certainly can come back at the next meeting and try to give you a little more of a breakout of how Catherine spends her time and what she's tasked with, and how much of this is social media and how much of this is supporting other programs and projects.
I think that would be awesome. Kurt,
Yeah.
go ahead.
we need an hour's breakdown by project and by also how much of an expenditure. And if it's just Catherine or if it's some other people too. I suspect it's mostly Catherine. I don't know if it's only Catherine. But if we get those numbers, that would be great.
Do we have a pretty good sense of that from the hourly system that we have in place, Joni, Catherine, even do a good estimate? I mean,
And are we looking for, what is the work program for Catherine for this year, coming year? We do have that developed,
sure.
if that would meet your requirements.
Yeah, I think give us a sense for like plan, typical plan, maybe it's in a previous year or this one, to help us understand what that is. I think that's what I hear consistently the board would like to see. But I think you captured it, Joni, and okay.
We certainly can do that.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? Frank?
Any idea of how much time it might take to do what we just requested? I'm trying to balance between our need or desire to know and your ability to be productive. Because every time you ask for a report, that's productive time put into that report.
Mr. Chair, managers, I'm guessing this is going to take me a half a day to do the research and pull it together and document it.
Anybody else? Seeing none. All right, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Joni. All right, we're on to the fish stocking, 2021 fish stocking.
All right, so this is just an update on our fish stocking plan for 2021. So this kind of started off last year when we were doing the accelerated carp management strategies, and it came up that stocking bluegills would reduce the populations and the recruitment in the upstream water bodies for carp. So that was our first year last year. We stocked 2,900 fish in the upstream water bodies from Spring Lake. And then that kind of springboarded a conversation with the CAC, where Christian Morkeberg did a lot of research, talked to a lot of folks, and decided that we might want to also consider game fish stocking. And so now here we are in year 2, and we're looking at stocking for 2 important reasons now. One is to reduce the carp populations to improve our water quality, and the second is to maintain a healthy game fish population. So with the first one, with the bluegill stocking, like I said, last year we stocked Northwood Pond. We put 900 bluegills in that one. And then down here at Geist Wetland, we stocked 2,000. And so with the hard winter that we had, there was a lot of fish kills all over. We had reports at Pike Lake. We had some at Northwood Pond, Geist Wetland. They were kind of all over. So we've been out doing pike net surveys, a little bit of electrofishing in Geist Wetland to see if any of those bluegills survived. Northwood Pond we surveyed last fall, and in those pike nets we didn't see any bluegills, so we're just going to restock that pretty well for this spring. But the ones that we had questions about were the tadpole pond, the diesel pond, and the Geist Wetland. So when we surveyed these, in the tadpole pond, we did find bluegills and we found some black crappies. So we know that there is some movement between Spring Lake because those bluegills were pretty large. They were 7 inches, which isn't like tremendous, but it's more than what we've seen in other surveys for pike nets. And then the desalt pond and the Geist Wetland, we didn't find a single bluegill. So we know that the desalt pond and the Geist Wetland are areas that we really need to stock. And with the Geist Wetland, as we all know, we just installed that carp barrier last year, and so that is blocked off from adult carp entering that water body to spawn. But if there are carp existing in there, if they have young of the year, those young of the year will go downstream through those 2-inch spaced bars and move down to Spring Lake. So we do want to still look at that wetland and prevent recruitment. We do try to lower the Geist Wetland a little bit in the fall so that it does have a hard freeze. But that means we do need to continue to stock the bluegills, otherwise they will freeze out as well. So our suggestion based on funding is to stock 700 in the Northwood Pond for Prior Lake, and then to stock 200 in the Desalt Pond and 1,400 in the Geist Wetland. Our stocking rates are based on what we assume would probably be there, and the suggesting stocking rate for bluegills for carp management. And then as far as the walleye goes, last year we kind of ran into like the little speed bump with the DNR. We were talking to them about stocking largemouth bass and other things, but they recommended only stocking walleyes and only stocking to the level that they're stocking. So if they're stocking 2,000 walleyes, we can stock 2,000 walleyes, but only in the years that they're stocking, which is odd years. It's a requirement that they want, and there is some competition. Like if you stock walleyes one year and you do it the same size the next year, there's some competition there. There's a little bit of less success for those walleyes, so they want to do it every other year and only the size that they're stocking. So we're following their recommendations, and as you can see, it's 2021, so it's a stocking year. And this is what they've done in the past. They haven't been incredibly consistent, but this is based off survey work that they do themselves to see what's needed. They haven't given us the official numbers yet for this year, but they assume that it's going to be a larger amount because they have had more fishing pressures with the COVID. So Based on the funding that we've received from the Spring Lake Association, the Prior Lake Association, and the Rotary Club, so we're going to be stocking an additional 1,000 walleye in Lower Prior, an additional 1,000 in Upper, and 1,300 in Spring Lake, just at the boat launches. And this date will be in October, so they always stock in the fall, so we'll be stocking with them at the same time, in the same size fish that they're stocking, which is typically fingerlings. And as a summary, this is kind of what we're thinking. So the numbers that I had before all kind of listed here along with the delivery fees. And so our district levy total, what we had planned for this year is $4,000. And so that's our restriction. So we would stock more if we had more funding. We're definitely not matching the DNR levels, but we're stocking the maximum we have with the funding that we have, if that makes sense. And we're making sure that we're stocking enough bluegills to make a dent in that carp population if there's carp there. So that's our plan for 2021. And I do want to say, like, thank you out to our donors too. We couldn't have stocked this much without them, and we really appreciate their donations. So shout out to the Spring Lake Association, Prior Lake Association, and Prior Lake Rotary. But do you guys have any questions about the stocking?
Thanks for the shout out, Maggie. That's what I was hoping for. These guys, it's great that they're coming on. Maggie, this was a great report. I think this looks really good. I saw Frank also kind of curious as I was listening to you about the stocking of the walleyes. And when I read this, I got the impression that sometimes they might have issues like budget, stuff that'll keep them from stocking. Is there a way for us to understand what they're willing to stock? I mean, we don't need to supplement those dollars if they're already going to stock to whatever capacity they would allow us to stock. Will they share that information in future years for us if our funding partners want to continue these efforts so that we can, if there's a gap in the capability to fund more walleye, that then we could leverage those dollars? Is that?
Mr. Chair Managers, that's a good point, because as you can kind of see, it kind of swung down pretty low for a few years. I can ask Daryl Allison from our area fisheries guy and ask him what his thoughts are on that.
Okay. Thanks. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Normally, the DNR is responsible for game fish stocking, right? It's their baby. By doing this ourselves, are we creating a precedent where they say, well, they got their own money, the Prior Lake Spring Lake area folks, and we'll just either keep our donation at the same level or let them slip a little. They'll fill it out. So, I mean, I don't mean to be that way, but I'm a little worried about DNR saying, oh, okay, you got some money, throw in. And then secondly, I mean, to me, there's no question our job is to put bluegills in. Why? Because bluegills prevent carp, adult carp. Walleyes don't, I don't think. I mean, this has become more of a walleye stocking program than it has become a bluegill. Look at the numbers, look at the money. Is that okay with us? Is that from a policy perspective where we want to be? And I appreciate, we want to keep these lakes where people want to go to and fish. I understand that.
So let me just add two pieces, and then Maggie might. But so Frank, some of this started before, I think before you joined us. And two things that I recall, that there are other watersheds that are also stocking and supplementing the DNR thing. So we're not alone in this, and that's part of why I was asking Maggie the questions I did, because to get at that exact same point, whether we're going to be, they'll save their budget to go do someplace else. So I think that's worthy. But I think the reason, well, no, not the reason. Well, it is the reason, because I was involved in this and some of the relationships and the communication with the two lake associations is when they started to hear about the potential fish stocking, they asked about walleye, because it's the Minnesota fish, right? It's our state fish, and everybody loves the walleye, and it looked like we might not be stocking, and numbers were down. So that's how their additional dollars, they wanted to add that to walleye, not the district. And so this is just, they're collaborating with us because they're supporting the bluegill, and they too, their members loved this idea of stocking the walleye. I mean, it was one of those things, like a standing ovation for supporting that effort. It was really supportive, and I think that'll keep the bluegill funding coming along. So I would look at it sort of in the reverse track. It's our way of keeping them engaged and working with us. But essentially, yes, correct. But they too, well, no, I'm going to clarify, because I know in the conversations, because I was presenting this stuff to the PLA and actually both the PLA and the SLA, they do support our clean water activities, and they do want some of their funds supporting the bluegill activities. But they're exclusively focused on the walleye.
Thank you.
Maggie, just let me ask, would there be anything you would add to Frank's comment? And then Bruce, you're up.
Mr. Chair, Manager Boyles, so, you know, if you guys recall, we had like the carp tournament a while ago, and eventually we handed that over to Naughty Oar, and it didn't end up going on. But I thought that was always a good idea. We started something, we figured out the kinks, we worked them out, and we handed it off. Jeff Anderson has noted that this might be a really great one to hand over to the lake associations and help facilitate that and help them figure out how to do that now that we've kind of set the pavement for it. So we could, in the future, pass this off to the lake associations, help them with it, and let them be the lead.
Great. Bruce?
Just to get back on the walleyes, I think the DNR probably has their minimum standards or whatever, minimum stocking, who knows? So we might be stocking more than what they would have. But we're not overstocking, I don't believe, or could we ever? Can we overstock?
Mr. Chair, Manager Loney, we kind of can't because walleye aren't a naturally reproducing fish in these lakes. So eventually they'll just get fished out. I don't know if they'd ever reach the point of overstocking because we do have such large lakes. I forget the number for walleye stocking where you do kind of max it out, but it would be a lot. It would be tens of thousands of dollars. And the DNR is never going to get to that level, and neither will we.
And then I had another question on the bluegills. I know we had a problem with the permitting, I think last year. Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. But when are we going to be doing the bluegill stocking? We have to get, who gets the permit? Remember, there was a confusion. So I'd like a timeline or who's doing what so we get that thing moving.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, Manager Loney, so with the permit, we did get it last year for the spring stocking. The DNR didn't really have any issues with us stocking upstream areas that are connected to the lake but aren't in the lake. The issue and the rub that they had is when we talked about bluegill stocking within the lake. So as long as we're doing these upstream areas, it should be fine. We do, now that we have like a discussion with you guys and approval to go forward, we will be getting the permit. It only lasts like a certain amount of days, so we don't want to get it way ahead of time and then be kind of stuck. So right now we're soliciting quotes from the different fisheries and just making sure we get the best deal too.
Thank you. Anybody else? Steve?
Yeah, as far as bluegill, they eat carp eggs, and walleyes are big eaters of small minnows, so any carp minnows that hatch, the walleyes will definitely be after them as a
Awesome. Okay, I think we're done. Is there, Joni, anything more on the update stuff?
Mr. Chair, Manager Loney, just to clarify, the carp or the bluegill stocking will be happening here, within the month. There's temperature requirements that we need to get the bluegills in before the temperatures in the water gets too high. So this will be happening fairly quickly.
Good,
Kurt?
thank you.
No.
It'd be nice to have pictures of that.
Now, I'm assuming that the CAC is going to take the lead on getting volunteers on this thing, or do we need volunteers, or is our fisheries just going to come and do the work?
Mr. Chair, Manager Hennis, it's actually a really unexciting event, beyond the fact that usually we try to fin clip them, but fin clipping, sitting there and clipping thousands of fish, nobody wants to be there for that. But if you guys think you know of a great volunteer, let me know, I will reach out.
Bruce, I think his mic cut off, but there was a request by both our funding partners to go get a picture of some nature to help them promote what they're doing to their membership. So have we tied that one or checked that box to support our partners?
Mr. Chair, we will make sure that we get some photos.
Awesome, thank you. All right, before we get into manager presentations, Joni, I owe you an apology here. I'm not sure how I missed it, but then clearly a couple of my colleagues did. As I was paging through this, my packet does have those consent agenda items. And so I know exactly. I don't know if they magically appeared, because I got to tell you, but I got interrupted. Sorry, I was on puppy duty when I was trying to do this, and I got interrupted multiple times. But I know when I ended up asking my colleagues, so I'm going to confirm whether it was just me and my failing memory or attention span. So, gents, did you end up having this? And did you have a chance, the consent agenda items that we removed, that I requested or we removed? Did you have those, and did you get a chance to review them for everybody here?
I've got the minutes. I've got all the minutes.
All the consent agenda items. There's the resolution for the JPA MOA emergency fund transfer, interest transfer, authorization for the district administrator to access the district banking and brokerage accounts, and then 5.6 to approve the 2020 annual report.
I got all that.
Did you get it and you read it?
Yep.
Okay, so you're good. Frank, are you on?
I read it. Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
And you're good on it, Steve? Okay, then we're going to go back and add these on, and I'm just going to not vote on it because I did not review those. But so that's, again, my apologies, Joni, and everybody else. But we'll go add those back on when we do the consent agenda. But that's why I just picked that up, and we're going to get that done for you, Joni. So with that, are there any manager presentations, liaison updates on watershed-related stuff? Bruce?
With the Scott WMO, or Scott Water Management, Scott WMO organization, I just thought it'd be interesting. They've been dealing with wake boats, and I think that issue is going to keep coming up because people are just, the people that don't have wake boats versus the people that do, it's going to be out there. And just thought I'd mention that, and they just approved their annual report in Lake Summary too. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else? Kurt?
As of next Monday, Minnesota State Highway 282 is going to be closed from the junction of 1317 and 282 heading west to Jordan, sir. So if any of our employees, that includes part of our watershed district out to Sutton Lake, if they know about that, be aware that you may have to look at alternate routes.
So right now, then, we're moving on to the consent agenda, which, because of my failure, I asked for these to remove. That's okay. I need it sometimes. I'm going to entertain a motion to amend the consent agenda to add 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6 onto the consent agenda. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I am going to vote for that one. That motion carries 5-0. So now I'm going to end up asking my colleagues, is there anybody that would like anything removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, that I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Oh,
One moment, we have a point of information or clarification. Go, Joni, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I would request that you remove item 5.6, the annual report, and then take a separate vote on that. I would like to provide some additional information about that report.
Gotcha, will do. All right, so we have removed 5.6. I would then entertain a motion to approve the amended consent, the new amended consent agenda.
So moved.
second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 We have 4 ayes and 1 abstention. That motion carries. All right, Joni, go ahead. 5.6. What would you like to add to that?
After we issued the annual report, we realized that the report did omit some information on the grants that we had received last year. At your chair, we did provide an amended cover letter about that and the proposed changes. So the annual report, we would like to include in that report just a reference that we received $449,500 Bowser grant to fund the alum treatments in Upper Prior Lake, and also to amend the report to include the reference that we received $207,000 from the DNR, a DNR grant, to install the Sutton Lake outlet structure. So those are really the only revisions to the report. So we would ask that the Board of Managers, approve the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District 2020 annual report as revised to include information on the Bowser grant for the Upper Prior Lake alum treatment and the DNR for the Sutton Lake outlet, and to authorize its release to Bowser and to the DNR.
Great. Thanks, Joni. Anybody?
I'll make a motion, and I have one question after I make the motion. I will make a motion to approve the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District 2020 annual report as revised, to include information on the Bowser grant for the Upper Prior Lake alum treatment and the DNR grant for the Sutton Lake outlet, and to authorize its release to the Board and Water, Soil Resources, and the DNR.
Second that motion.
Okay.
Any further, Bruce, do you have?
Real quick, I don't know if this is a big deal, but is this the right date on the Sutton Lake and the back there? Your one grant goes to December 31, and the other one goes just to December 30. I don't know if it's a big deal. Is that a typo, or just that's the way the grants are? It seems funny.
Manager Loney, is the question whether it goes to December 30 or December 31st?
Yeah, go to December 31, it doesn't make sense. But,
And Maggie is telling me December 30th is correct.
okay, that's all I had.
Okay, so we have motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 4 ayes. Frank, were you an aye, sir?
I said aye.
You did? Awesome.
Aye.
And I'm going to abstain again just because I hadn't read it, but I got to tell you what, I am going to be taking this back home, and as my penance, I'm going to make sure I read it because it looks like a good report. So again, my apologies. Thank you. So that motion carries. All right, the treasurer's report. Bruce, you are up, sir.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of things going on in financing with the new accountant and that. My one report, which is a snapshot, which just shows the amount of cash we have in the bank, the two banks we still have Old National, we still have Sterling, or we do have Sterling, and we still have Northland Securities, which is just total cash. And then I put in the restricted funds. So that is really correct. That's the right amount. The other report, trying to do some future expenditures and looking at the restricted funds and trying to get my handle on the grants and the PLOC, and the numbers I've got in that report aren't correct. We're going to work on that. I know we've had a meeting, Joni and Mike and I, on what we need to get from CLA, so we need to contact them and get everybody on the same page. These are the numbers, this is the right accounting, this is the right information that we want to show for cash flow and going ahead, cash flow by the month, so we know how much do we really have available for us if we want to do a project or not, and how well we're doing. So anyway, the second report needs some work, so give me another month.
Thank you,
Or
Bruce.
fire me. One or the
Thank
other.
you for trying to wrestle it down. That's what I'm going to say this time. So go ahead, Kurt.
Bruce, how long do you foresee we have to keep $500,000 in Old National checking account?
That's a good question, Manager Hennis. One of the things I'm looking at too is CD rates, and the best CD rates that I can find are at Old National. So we may want to keep a certain amount of money. I've talked to Administrator Giese over there, and we might have to determine when we're going to do it. We still have some funds, I believe, might be trickling in, so we have to keep that account open. But once that account is done, then we have to see what we want to do for investing. Now, the rates are not great, but the longer you go out and the longer you wait, the rates are going up. And we need to determine, that might be something we work with CLA, what is the amount of money we're comfortable of reinvesting in a CD versus just sitting, getting nothing right now. So that's the question.
And with these CDs, there's always a penalty if you pull them out early or not.
Right. So we'd have to look, is it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? When are
Right.
we going to really be spending money? When's a project coming? When's,
Right, projects, right.
Right. So
Thank you.
that's part of the, I think, our June retreat. We'll be talking about that.
Thank you.
little bit of that, and on our financial reports, we're going to do the cash flow, so we understand what our needs are, because we only get fed, kind of, so to speak, twice a year. Because we get the tax levy and the grant stuff, and sometimes we need the cushion, right? So we're going to make sure we know that before we figure out how much money we lock away to try and get some return on our taxpayers' dollars. So, thanks again, Bruce.
Yep.
There's nobody else. Okay, we are on to the last item, our upcoming meeting event schedule. Bruce, do you want to mention this? I should let somebody else. This is, since you're the liaison, you want to tell them about the
Okay.
next meeting, sir?
Oh, our next CAC meeting will be Thursday, May 27th, from 6:30 to 8. This will be a virtual meeting, so if anybody is interested in attaining that or looking at that meeting, I think you can go to our website and get the right information to get on there. But
And come meet
looking-
Maureen.
yeah, and Maureen will be there, so it'll be very interesting. She's so lively, I'll tell you. It's good.
Awesome.
So anyway, it'd be a good meeting.
All right, I would then,
I do have a quick question. How far out are we looking at continuing with the virtual meetings? It looks like Waltz is going to pull the plug on all restrictions as of July 1st for sure. Do we have any forecasts with that?
Mr. Chair, Manager Hennis, I think we will want to be taking a look at the governor's recommendations and probably having that discussion at our next CAC to start to try to understand when the members are comfortable to meet in person, following and trying to follow the governor's direction.
great, thank you. Then we're on to the final item of the day, our adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
He got it.
We have,
Steve's got it.
Steve gets it. We have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, staff. Good night.